and welcome back to Miss Hannah Loves Grammar. In this video I want to give you 5 top tips on what to avoid in English Language Paper 1 question 5. Do these at your peril, because honestly they're really rogue mistakes that can really wreck you and the mark scheme. So let's go for it. First off, no freestyling, because it equals no plan. When you run out of time, you run out of ideas and you're putting an immense amount of pressure on yourself. As much as we logically know that can be the case, I think you actually should have made some important decisions before you get in the exam on how you're going to be writing. And for that reason, I'm inserting 2 videos for you up above and down in the description box below. I think that starts with you looking at a full marks model of English Language Paper 1 question 5 to see that it's totally attainable in 45 minutes to write about a moment in time. But equally, I also put in there a way that you can plan ahead of the exam around the character you're writing and about so many other areas, so that the only thing that's new for you in that exam is the setting that your character is being placed in. Next up, very common to put too much action in there. It's not a 90-minute blockbuster film. Instead, we're actually concentrating on one tiny moment in time. By the time you've written your 2.5 or 3 sides, what we're actually hoping to do is show the examiner, the reader, what is happening, rather than just telling them event after event after event. So much of this comes from you slowing the pace of the narration down and instead focusing on a tiny moment that might be altering the character you have. Now, in terms of how this works, I have a tips and tricks video on show don't tell that I have here up above and down below in the description box. But alongside that, I wholeheartedly recommend you watching some of my writer's toolkit videos that explain to you the effects that you're creating when you use devices like personification and figurative devices like a simile and a metaphor. They really enhance the caliber of what you're writing about. More to be said about them in a moment. So, common rogue error when you're looking at the accuracy mark scheme is actually just mixing up tenses. You have to stay in the same tense, otherwise it sounds like you didn't realise you were making that mistake. Whether that's past tense or present tense, stay consistent throughout your writing. It can really limit you just below halfway on the accuracy marking of 16 marks that you're eligible for, and that can really be a huge game changer in terms of your overall mark and grade, when actually between previous years we've looked at something like in the region of 9 marks for the whole between the grade above and the grade below. I also recommend writing from the third person to be able to describe what you can see or what the character can see more fully, without having to be so close as the character in the first person that you can lose the examiner and the ability to describe their surroundings beautifully. Next up, not showing the range of punctuation that you know really can limit you with your accuracy mark. In particular, I've drawn attention here to the punctuation that gets most ignored, neglected, you could say, and by all means look up my playlist on each of these, whether that's semicolon, colon, apostrophe, dash, parentheses or brackets, question mark or exclamation mark. Please do take to the chat or the comments in this video with your experimentation on some of these if you're not 100% sure on how you're using them. The key thing that needs to be said, though, is not proofreading and then allowing an examiner to catch your error before you did is a crime. It carries a huge penalty when it's being examined because, well, it means it doesn't make sense. I urge you to think about how you will force the use of a semicolon, colon, and in particular brackets, question mark, and exclamation mark into your writing. With things like apostrophes, it's more a case of ensuring that you've used it appropriately where it's necessary in your writing and you don't ignore the use of it. But as I say, check out my actual playlist for more detail on those. And last up, we don't want a script, we want a description. It's so much harder with a script to weave in the descriptive form, and there are no marks awarded for dialogue. In fact, it's not an expectation at all. You'll notice that when it said parentheses or brackets earlier in the last slide, they accept brackets as fine. The ideal thing is that you don't have a character name through your writing. It forces you to distance them as a name, and instead you're focusing more on what you're seeing and experiencing of them. So concentrate on the description of things like show don't tell, of how you bring the scene to life, rather than creating the whole narrative of something bigger. Best of luck, and I'm sure you'll avoid these pitfalls.